Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting in person here in City Hall Council Chambers, as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Councilmember Andriotta will be giving the invocation this evening, and Mayor Joyner will begin the meeting immediately after.
Thank you. If you will, pray with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you for having the privilege of serving our town. I pray, Lord, that as we discuss our agenda and craft our policies for our city, that this council will always put the people's interests above our own. Remind us, Lord, that we are in this position not to be served, but to serve the public, just as Christ the King came not to be served, but to serve. I also pray, Father, that we will uphold what is moral and rational. And I just thank you for being in our presence tonight, and we give you glory in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and, 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. One roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta,
I am here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Joyner.
Here. We move on to item 3, report from closed session. We had no closed session this evening, so there's nothing to report out. Who am I gonna pick on tonight? I should do the city treasurer with the Hawaiian shirt and the deep sunburn.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Richard. Agenda modifications. Any members of the staff seeking a modification to the agenda? Seeing none. How about council? None. We'll move on to presentations. Item 6A, a proclamation 2023-03, recognizing May 21st through 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. I will go ahead and read the proclamation, and we'll take a vote on that. And then Matt will present that to you and your guys and give you a little time to chat with us, if that's all right. All right. Proclamation 2023-03, a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln declaring the week of May 21st through the 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. Whereas the American Public Works Association has themed this year's National Public Works Week as connecting the world through public works, and whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life and well-being of the people of the City of Lincoln, and whereas the infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and their private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and the children of the City of Lincoln to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of Lincoln do hereby designate May 21st through the 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. Urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. I will accept a motion on the item.
I move that we approve proclamation 2023-03, recognizing National Public Works Week.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Awesome.
All right. Matt, have you joined me? Yeah, probably so. Why don't you go ahead?
Good evening. I have a few prepared statements for this special night. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Matthew Medill, the Public Works Director for your Public Works Department. I'd first and foremost like to thank the Mayor and City Council for recognizing National Public Works Week and for your ongoing trust and support. Your continued and ongoing support of the Public Works Department is truly meaningful to our staff and helps fuel our passion for providing the community with top-tier municipal services that improve the lives of our community members every day. National Public Works Week is a special time to provide formal acknowledgement of the hardworking and talented professionals who provide and maintain the infrastructure and services collectively known as public works. Unlike some cities, our city is a full-service city, and that means our city Public Works Department includes wastewater, water, fleet, parks and facilities, streets and drainage, recycling and solid waste, airport, and administration. Together, these divisions in the Public Works Department, these divisions in Public Works plays a critical role in the quality of life for residents and the business community. Public Works has an impact on every member in our community, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our staff take this responsibility seriously and have demonstrated the highest level of commitment and service to our community members. As your director for the past 5 months, almost 6 months, I'm blessed to be here today speaking on behalf of such a collaborative, driven, and prideful group of individuals. This department was built from the ground up with dedicated staff that strive to improve our performance and customer service every day. This Public Works team is most deserving of this recognition tonight, which is a culmination of all the positive feedback we hear from the community daily. And I cannot leave here tonight without saying that Public Works success can be attributed to a full team of support backing us up from each of the city departments, both the leadership and the staff. Now, since this is a Public Works moment in the spotlight, I'm going to take the liberty and take some more time since I have the microphone, and I'd like to recognize a few of the members that are with us tonight. And if you could just briefly stand when I introduce you. Angela Frost, our Environmental Services Manager, overseeing recycling and solid waste and streets and drainage. She made sure I added drainage today. That's very important, keeping our waterways clean. And one of the 2 remaining managers that led the department prior to my onboarding, which was a significant amount of time and a lot of effort. So the next person, the man who needs no introduction, everyone's the most familiar with him. I don't even need to say his name, but his name is Scott Boynton. He's our Maintenance Services Manager. I wasn't going to say it, but I'm sure you've seen his emails come across on your computer. He always has humor in mind. He oversees parks, facilities, open space, and most recently, the airport. Mike Osborne, the man who can usually be seen wearing a train conductor's hat at the courtyard, our Public Services Supervisor over the Fleet Division that keeps our equipment and vehicles operational. He's also integral in helping prepare strategy for the Advanced Clean Fleet upcoming electrification. So he's been very helpful. Aaron Hookins, our Interim Maintenance Services Manager overseeing water and wastewater. Most recently, we had both our Maintenance Services Manager and Supervisor of the Water Division retire within a few weeks of each other. And Aaron has stepped up and he's made sure services remained fully operational. And I think it was either his first or second weekend, we actually had an operational situation and he helped make sure water stayed in service. So he's been very helpful. Christian Hunsel, our Senior Administrative Analyst who oversees the Administrative Division, including managing our social media outreach and public information. And he also provides high-level support to me, for which I'm grateful. Austin Dunlap, one of the high-performing maintenance worker, or he's a high-performing maintenance worker too in the Parks and Facilities Department, who started as an intern in Fleet and established an excellent reputation for getting things done. And then tonight, we're also joined by Matt Reynolds. He's been a wastewater tech for over 20 years, and Aaron helped me with this one. He has had his hands in every part of the sewer for the good part of 20 years, making sure things keep flowing. Or 27 years. Oh, okay.
Hopefully he's washing
Oh,
his
and then
hands.
Jose Reyes is also here. He started in our streets department, and we recently talked about the toll that working and fixing the leaks over 17 years in the city, fixing the water leaks has, been a chore, and he's feeling it. But thank you so much, Jose. And with that, I'd also like to thank the families that came to join us in this celebration, and thank the community for your continued support. And we have a very bright future here in the city of Lincoln. So thank you for the time.
Yeah.
If we could take just another moment for the photo,
Of course.
and then could everyone join me in the corner? I think that's,
The corner. You going over
yeah,
there?
I think so. That just has least disruptive.
All right,
That's okay.
that's fine.
We can try to squeeze through here. Think so? Okay, we'll take it in front of the dais.
All right, we're winging it. All right, so one more big round of applause, if you would, please, for the folks who make our toilets flush, the water come into our house, and the garbage go away. We could not live the lives we live without those folks. All right, item 6B, flash vote. Jennifer.
I don't know if they know I have a presentation or not. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to talk about Flash Vote. We did our first community survey a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to go and give you guys an overview of what it was and what we did and go through a little bit of the results. So just for background, we wanted to do an online survey because for ease of use, to get as many people as we could within the city. We promoted Flash Vote for approximately 4 months before we actually launched our first survey so that we could reach as many people as possible. One of the reasons we picked it is because it's also used by Placer County. So anyone who was signed up that lives in Lincoln that signed up for Placer County was automatically in our pool of survey people. It's nice. They also have a survey library with proven recommendations. So you can, any similar survey that they used in another community, you can take information from those to help you make your survey. We wanted it to be short. We didn't want to give someone a survey that they were filling out for 20 minutes because you get survey drag. You just stop answering the questions appropriately. And this other one, what else we liked about this is that it's only open for 48 hours. So it opens and then You have 48 hours to fill it out. If you don't, you close it. And the next survey, hopefully people will fill it out in the time that it's launched. The other thing is that it's tied to your address, so your actual location. It'll give us an idea of where in the city we might be lacking in services or not reaching people that we otherwise wouldn't know about. And it also provides demographic information because of the location that it's tied to. So these are the 5 questions that we did. Just as an overview, what are the strengths of Lincoln? Which are most important to you? What do you see as the biggest problem in Lincoln 10 years from now? How would you spend $10,000? Doesn't go very far. And if you have any comments or suggestions on how to improve quality of life. So very simple, easy questions, but they provided a lot of really good information. I'm going to go through the survey live, but I have 2 things that I pulled out that I found very interesting that I just wanted to highlight for everybody. So on the left, you'll see the 2 questions. What are the strengths that you see in Lincoln and how important are they to you? So what is really neat about this survey is it takes those 2 questions and you see how something's important and how satisfied they are. And so what you want to do in this, I drew a line, you want to be right along the line on your results. If you are above the line, it's they're highly satisfied, but it's not that important to them. So maybe you're putting too much effort into something because it doesn't have high importance, but everyone is fine with it. And then if you're in the bottom right, it's really important to them, but they're not satisfied. And I highlighted 3 areas that 2 were below the line and 1 that was, right above the line, the closest. So physical safety and security across everybody is most important. And people were the least satisfied. But across the board, that's everyone's number 1. This is what that's most important to me. The next one is the balance of neighborhoods and open space. So that's really important to people. And overall, they're in the little bit of the less satisfied area. And then the next one is sense of community. So you can look at these 3 and you can be like, oh, well, is that how everyone's feeling about it? But what you can do then is drill in a little bit deeper. And so here, I pulled this out a little bit because I thought this was interesting. So this is based on location. And you can see, so public safety and security is the P, S, and S, right? And those are all kind of bunched together in that area. It's not, people aren't satisfied below the 50% mark. They are below the line, but you can see the people that are least satisfied is maybe like the downtown area. So then you could ask yourself, what does that have to do with? And so then you can drill into it deeper to see physical safety and security. You can see that the people in the green area, they're actually pretty satisfied with how they feel everything is. And it's very important to them. But the red is just less. And then the other one is the balance of neighborhoods and open space. So you can see again, the people least satisfied is like the downtown area, which is going to be more dense because in that area that people are living, they might not have the same open space. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was breaking it out by age. So you can see that pretty much everybody is in the 70% range of importance for physical safety and security, except for the 30 and unders because they feel like they're gonna live forever. And that's not worried about. But then you can see that the downtown area, the nightlife is the most important thing to them. Not so much the other part. And then between, the 30 and 45, the young families, access to recreation parks, the balance of a neighborhood and open space, the physical safety and security, that's what's most important to them. And I wanted to take you to the survey. So anyone who signs up for Flash Vote now can see this survey and look at it and play with it. Zoom in a little bit. So we had 493 participants. 420 of those were people that had signed up prior to the survey launch. 73 of those were people that signed up once the survey had launched. So if someone said, hey, I got the survey, and they shared it amongst their friends, that would be the people that signed up within the 73 grouping. You can filter by the locals, so that would be only people living in Lincoln. Owner versus non-owner. And then their age, that's the grouping that we saw, the male and female. This council district is the location one that I showed you. And then member panel. So member panel is that difference between the people that were signed up prior to the survey launch and then after. And this is interesting because you can see if there was a group of people that got it sent to their friends. So this many people were in the panel, and then they sent it to people who it's like they sent it to their friends, and that's how it was filled out. So the other thing, which is what Dan is going to love, and I'm just going to show him this, you can export to PDF, Excel, or a JSON file. And it's right here in the thing. And then when people filled out the survey, they were able to give other responses. And if there's something in here that you want to see more about, like, there's a lot of talk about homeless, you can click on homeless and it'll filter the responses to only show you what the comments were about homeless. Schools, same thing. And you can do that with all of these. And then as you hover over each dot, it'll tell you what it is. If this is hard for you to read, you can also do this table view and it'll break it out for you this way. Other than that, I feel like, we had a really good response. Close to 500 people responding to our first survey is really good. We had a really good range of demographics of, areas that people live. So it overall was a statistically well done survey. And with that, I'll take any questions.
You answered my first question. I did not sign up for it, but I got sent the survey itself. But apparently if you signed up for Flash Vote with the county, it picks up that pool and moves on. So that explains how I got that. I did get a number of emails from folks who said, I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to answer this. What's this all about? So there was some confusion there. I don't know why they would have gotten it.
So
Unless they were signed up for the.
as part of the package, there's an SMS outreach, which is through text, and it's done by the company, and they have access to registered voters within that grouping that they can send the text message to get people to sign up to take the survey. But that's not done through us, that's through Flash Vote.
And that in particular was done to increase the statistical accuracy this data that we looked at, it reflects the community with a plus or minus 5% accuracy as it sits. The more people you get, the more young males or young females or whatever we're short on, that you want to get it down to under 2%. And that's what we're striving for. But when you look at the blue lines on the top level, that's accurate to plus or minus 5% of what everybody in Lincoln, regardless of whether you vote or not, what everybody in Lincoln agrees with. So, I'm sorry. That was
The only reason it was
a commercial.
It's all right. I'm glad you love it. You spent about an hour and a half during our strategic retreat looking through it, as a matter of fact. So the only reason it was a question to me was when this was initially introduced to us, only those who signed up for it were going to be able to take it. And so that addition to it was something I didn't know about. Any other questions?
On when they send the text to alert them, going back to what the mayor said, if somebody doesn't want it, can they type in stop and then they'll get excused from that? Okay.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, no, the results were really interesting, very fascinating. So thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the next survey.
I almost asked you to click on Roseville, the word Roseville, because why it's showing up in our survey is curious, but I can almost guess we don't want to become another Roseville.
That's what it is.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Oh,
Any
I just thought the comments to what would you spend $10,000 on were hilarious because almost everybody said you can't do anything with $10,000. I thought that was an interesting question.
Well, it was specifically city projects. It wasn't in their own world, own life. $10,000 will go a long way in their own life.
Yeah,
right?
but for city projects, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember, everything is $1 million.
That's, we've been told, yeah, yeah, all right. Any other council members? If not, I'll go ahead and turn it to the public. Anybody curious or got questions about the survey? Anyone online? All right, thank you, John.
Mayor, what I don't think she mentioned was this was kind of our maiden voyage with Flash Vote. And so we picked sort of a broad kind of set of questions. What you'll probably see in future Flash Votes will be much more targeted, specific types of questions that have follow-ups to them, which will help inform your decision-making, we hope.
Well, it is interesting to see that there are a number of people for whom the balance between housing and open space is too low. And yet we have a requirement for 40% open space. And the highest number of those look to be in Lincoln Crossing, which has an abundance of trails and open space and parks and linear parks. So
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, and so like the interesting thing about that is you could, draw some potential assumptions. Is it that we don't explain and market enough our requirement and why the open space exists in those subdivisions that have been built? Or potentially is, there's sort of some desire that there be more than that, have all kinds of interesting policy implications.
With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item 7, public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not on our agenda tonight. I have one card. Is it Mauricio Chavez? Mauricio, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Excuse me, allergies killing me. My name is Mauricio Chavez, and I am a carpenter. I was chosen to be an organizer and represent the 37,000 union carpenters here in Northern California, to include the 3,200 carpenters here in the Sacramento greater area. I wanted to come and share my story with you and let you know how I got here. After high school, joined the Army because I was restless at home, didn't know what to do. 3 years later, I got out, went to work for a non-union contractor, picked up the basics in carpentry. He knew that my girlfriend at the time and I wanted to start a family, so he fired me. He said, I can't pay you what you need to start a family. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to find something else more suitable for what you're looking for. A few weeks later, my then girlfriend said, you need to do something with your life or I'm gone. So I took that to heed because she was the best thing since sliced bread for me. And I Googled apprenticeships. And as a veteran, I came across helmets to hard hats. Applied to all the trade unions that would allow me to apply to, and the carpenters were the first ones to call me and say, hey, would you like to come be a carpenter? Come on down to the training center, let's fill out some paperwork, let's get you started. 2 weeks later, I was making more money than I had ever made in my life. And as I progressed through my apprenticeship, I've continued to make more money than I've ever made in my life. The benefits that we fought, negotiated for, and won are one of the main reasons that my then girlfriend and I have been married now for 12 years. And we have an 8-year-old son now working for number 2. We live down in Hayward, which doesn't go far. The money doesn't take us very far, living space wise, but we've been able to survive and thrive there in one of the busiest hubs in California. The medical benefits that we get, that I earned for us, really helped my son because he struggled being in school. We had him in private school, but they were not equipped to help him because he was too rambunctious, too energetic, too this, too that. I would get calls almost every other day saying, hey, your son hit somebody, I need you to come pick him up. And it was a real source of stress in our lives for a good long while. And thanks to the benefits that we have, we were able to get him the help that he needs. And we got him squared away. And now he's a complete 180. I mean, if he were getting letter grades, he'd be getting straight A's across the board. Hasn't been sent home, hasn't been sent for anything, like, thank you for your time.
Go ahead if you want to wrap it up.
I would, thank you. We believe that all working people have a right to a good job with benefits, a living wage that can support a family, security and dignity in work and retirement, a safe and secure workplace, education and training to reach our full potential through an accredited apprenticeship. However, with rights come responsibilities. Being productive, efficient workers, producing work of the highest quality, work that we stand behind, improving our communities, helping fellow workers, represented and unrepresented, achieve safety and security in the workplace, and being active citizens and informed voters. So with that, I thank you for your time and have a great night.
Thank you, Mercy. You wanted to move up our way, there's plenty of work up here and a few folks in the room who could put you to work. All right, that's the only card I have. Is there anyone else in the room wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, anyone online? All right. We'll conclude public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Does any member of the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I don't need to remove it, but I need to recuse myself from item 8R. It's the large nonprofit grant,
Okay.
and I am recusing myself on that because I actually sit on the board of one of the organizations being considered.
Got it. So Christine Holly shouldn't have to leave the room on that one. We should be able to take it separately and, okay. Right. Any other member of the council wishing to remove an item? Seeing none, any member of the public wish the council to remove an item for discussion tonight? Mr. Chapman? 8J. All right, that's it, Byron? Okay. And no one online, Glenn, correct?
No.
All right. With that, I'll accept a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda.
I move approval of the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second,
Thank
Right.
you. Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana,
yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Item 8J, Byron, was there just a quick question or did you need a presentation on that? All right.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff, and those watching at home, and certainly those who take the time to come out. As I looked at this item, just a couple of questions. As I went through the packet, I noticed more and more, and I appreciate the fact that we are looking at public services more and more than as projects come down the pike. Literally with the thousands and thousands of homes that have come in over the last decade and more that are turning out. I was looking at the expenses and the things that need to be reimbursed that weren't maybe at negotiating with the developer who pays what. Also realizing that at some point, certainly in my lifetime, is depending on what you can sell a home for, oftentimes either it has to do the abundance of need and very few homes, and also when times are good, the price of homes. In some cases, most cases, a lot of cases, people can't afford the house that they would want, but that depends on where they're going. So my question and my comments are, is there a way in which that these services can be taken care of instead of after, before, when we are looking at things that need to be taken care of, whether it's parks, whether it's any of the other items, fire department, police department services. When I read this and went through it, I was just kind of shaking my head going, it's like we're behind the ball. We're not in front of it. And I'd like to find out maybe how that is, or if it's changed, or what are we looking for? Because apparently right now, the way I look at it, with all the homes that are going in, at this point, we're not catching up. So thank you.
Thank you, Byron. I think that's a fair question. This actually relates to the 12 Bridges area, which was originally approved in the late 90s, I think. So we are, in some respects, playing a bit of catch up on that. Sean, did you want to take it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think like the distinction between a mechanism like our Community Facilities District 1801 and 2 is, unlike the fees that we would charge one time when someone comes in with a building permit, for example, those are typically for infrastructure that's needed to serve or be upgraded to serve that project, wherever it may be. This mechanism was created and put in place by the council a number of years ago as a way to make up the gap that exists in ongoing costs for providing services to the new residents that are coming in. So the way to think of it is, remember, gave a couple presentations on property tax recently. There's a gap that exists, especially in older tax sharing agreements, between what we receive as your base amount that we all pay and the actual cost for providing services. 1801 is for localized maintenance services, roads, landscaping, streets, et cetera. 1802 is public safety. So those are the two core components that we, are specific to and identified as sort of where we have service gaps and ability to pay. So essentially what happens is every new project that comes in, moving back to 2018 and forward now, has an analysis done to identify what is the base amount that we expect to receive for property taxes, and what's the gap that exists and what it's actually going to cost to provide that service. And then a calculation is done that splits that cost up amongst the project, and it is assessed on a yearly basis from now and into the future, so that we're avoiding what has been, I think Mr. Chapman's overall point is that folks that have already been living here are not subsidizing the services that we're providing for those new residents coming in. So it's essentially like pay your own way idea. And it's a tool that really wouldn't be necessary in a different kind of property tax environment where we had a very different share. But as it stands today, we sort of get what we can get. And this is our ability to make sure that, current residents are not subsidizing new development. In a nutshell, that's the answer, but I can get into more detail if you like.
And it's not unique to Lincoln. This is spreading.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to point out one other thing. We are super, super careful and judicious about how we come up with the numbers and assess them. We're totally aware that you layer on a couple CFDs, you layer on Some of these projects have homeowners associations or other fees. And there's certain, there's probably some developers here. Oh, yep, we have a couple of developers in the audience, and they'll tell you that there is a number, or at least a percentage point of add-on cost beyond a mortgage that makes it untenable for most buyers. And so we try to be really careful about never eclipsing that. And we're usually communicating and collaborating with the project applicant or developer to make sure we're in that pocket. So we're charging an appropriate amount to cover those services, but not more than we need to provide them.
Thank you, Sean. Any other member of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item. I guess we need a vote on that, don't we? Do I have a motion?
A motion to adopt resolution 2023-082 and resolution 2023-083.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skent.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Move on to item 8R, adopt resolution 2023-090, approving the awards in the large nonprofit grant program. Is there any discussion? I don't think so.
I move approval of adoption that we adopt resolution 2023-090.
Second.
Mayor, I do have a hand raised on Zoom.
Oh.
Gary McDonald, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I very much appreciate all the support that you've provided the Lighthouse with the Celebrity Waiter Luncheon and this large grant, and that we're going to put it to good use. And I cannot thank you enough. This allows us to hire additional people to serve more people. We've had a huge uptick in suicidal ideation in children, and I probably put it in the grant proposal, but we did lose one of the children on our wait list. By the time we called the family, they had said that their 11-year-old boy had already taken their life. So it is a serious situation out there, and I very much appreciate that. And I would be there in person, and I apologize for not being there in person, but my wife was just transported to Kaiser Emergency. So I'm at Kaiser. So I just wanted to say thank you. And that's really all I had. Otherwise, I would be there if it weren't for the emergency with my wife.
Thank you, Gary, and go be with your wife, please.
Thank you very much for everything.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? All right, I have a motion and a second. Gwen?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first and second.
Dan is the first and the second.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Carl Skent.
Yep.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. All right, that completes our consent agenda. We move on to public hearings. Item 9A. Conduct a public hearing and 2, adopt resolution 2023-091, approving the annual adjustment of the Placer Conservation Program's fiscal year 2023, 2024 development fees and determining the proposed action is not a project pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA guidelines, and is exempt from CEQA pursuant to sections 15061B 3 and 15273, 15313, and 15317. Ms. Mollenkopf.
I think the reading of that is probably going to be longer than my staff report. So as you likely recall, this is an annual adjustment that comes before you every year. It's a routine matter. Essentially, the fees that are charged to developers for CEQA mitigation, if they go through the Placer County, the Conservation Agency, they get indexed every year for inflation. And so this is approving the fees that were recommended by the PCCP board and then have also been adopted and accepted by the County Board of Supervisors. So now, as the other agency that's a member of the PCA, it's before the council to also adopt the increasing these fees, noting that we will be before you, I think, 2 more times on an annual review, and then the PCA will be going out for a 5-year nexus study to take a deeper dive and to evaluate the fees.
Very good. Thank you, Christine. Any questions from the council? Comments, Dan?
No, I mean, the costs are the costs. Property is really going up, mitigation property costs. And, you know, we're matching the plan.
Any member of the public wishing to speak on this item?
No, Mayor, so that was opening the public hearing, correct?
It didn't look like it, but yes, that was opening the public hearing. Thank you for your patience. Yes, open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and come back up here for a motion.
I move approval.
Second,
I have a motion, Andriata, second, Carlson.
Yes. Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner?
Yes. We move on to item 9B, conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2023-092, approving the annual inflationary increase to the source water connection fees as defined in section 13.04.360 of the City of Lincoln Code of Ordinance and determining the proposed action is not a project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. I'm not going to read all the guidelines. CEQA. Is this yours as well, Christine? I don't have a name on this one. Travis?
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to Christine's, this is an annual item that we'll be bringing before you. And really what it is we've got our water connection fee. It has two different components. One of those components is a source water connection fee. As we've all been speaking about recently, we've got a regulated and unregulated connection component, depending on where you live in the city. Per the Nexus study, the regulated zone is to be have a CCI applied. It's April through April of every year. So for the regulated, this would be increasing 1.34%, which is April last year through April of this year. On the unregulated side, that's a straight pass through from PCWA. So they adopted their new rates January 1st of 2023, taking it from $17.38 a gallon to $19.83 a gallon. Obviously, our escalation for regulated is 1.34. Their escalation for unregulated is 14.1%. However, there are very few people that are still going to be connecting to the unregulated zone. With that, I'll take any questions. It's, again, just the annual inflationary increase of the source water connection fee.
Any questions from council? Being none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item, please come to the podium. Anyone online? All right, close the public hearing, bring it back up here for action. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt resolution 2023-092.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Glenn.
Yes. Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yep.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner?
Yes. We move on to 9C, conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2023-093, approving the annual inflationary increase to the public facilities element fees for all new development within the city of Lincoln and determining that the proposed action is not a project pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guideline and is exempt from, I'm not familiar with that acronym, CESQ. Okay, that would be why I'm not familiar with it. All right, Travis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Once again, we are trying to package these up, all of our annual adjustments, and try to get them all lined up the April through April. So this one is for our impact fees. So per our adopted PFE, we're gonna bring before you annual inflationary adjustments, again, April through April period. The one unique aspect of this staff report and fee change is that we have been working with BIA. If you guys recall, we adopted the Nexus fee back in, it was a process, but pretty much the end of 2022. And we committed to working with BIA and reviewing some of the project elements and some of the assumptions that were part of the Nexus fee. So this action here is not just the same 1.34% inflationary increase, but there's also a substantial savings that the development community will be receiving because we did go and we looked at some elements that were changing, I've got them listed down in here under the background. So very briefly, the wastewater is related to Oak Tree Lane. That is that it was originally anticipated to be a really deep gravity sewer line. And with the new sort of Village One plan area and specific plan, that's now going to be a lot shallower force main, which has got a substantial savings on the project cost. The reclaimed water, that's really the city determined that it was not feasible to run reclaimed east of Auburn Ravine. So that's removing all of those elements that were in that previous 2018 study, including reclaimed elements east of Auburn Ravine. And lastly, transportation, that was the connection from where Oak Tree Lane and Friar Ranch Road tie in. The portion of Oak Tree Lane from that intersection up to Virginia Town was originally anticipated to be a 4-lane road, and now it's, or a 6-lane, now it's coming down, 4-lane to a 2-lane. So it's taking off a number of PFE elements. With all of that, working with Jeff and his team, you can see the total savings were Area 1 non-critical sewer, it's a saving of $356 per EDU. Area 2 non-critical sewer, $834, that's per EDU, pretty much per new home coming in. And then the transportation, that was all area number 2 non-critical, a savings of $125. Those savings don't apply directly. It's not necessarily just because we've got this 1/3 vesting that we've committed to implementing. So the savings are also going to be 1/3 vested as the fee increases. So at this vesting schedule, it's really roughly 1/3 of that they're recognizing in savings, but then July of next year and then July the following year, they'll recognize the full savings. With that, again, it's the same South San Francisco CCI, same 1.34, same equation. If anyone has any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them.
Got it, Travis. Thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item? Anyone online? Okay, close the public hearing. Back up here for action. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second. Have a motion, a second. Go ahead and roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner?
Yes. That completes our public hearings. We move on to general business. Item 10A, adopt 2 resolutions. For
Mayor,
the light.
sorry.
What did I do?
90.
It's a tiny little one, though. Without any spacing. That's why I missed it.
Gonna hurt
I am
Efren's
trying to beat a
feelings.
record. You're right.
Gonna hurt his feelings.
All right, I apologize. Item 9D is still a public hearing. Conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2023-094, approving the Auburn Ravine Center tentative parcel map time extension.
Yes, good evening, City Council members. Efren Sanchez, Senior Planner with Community Development Department. The project we have before you is a 4-year time extension request of the approved tentative parcel map, the Auburn Ravine Center, submitted by Roger Family Trust. A little bit of context: on March 23rd, 2021, the City Council approved the Auburn Ravine Center tentative parcel map under Resolution 2021-46 to divide 2.49 acres into 3 parcels. Subsequently, on March 14, 2023, the applicant submitted their first discretionary time extension for the Auburn Ravine Center tentative parcel map project in order to accommodate the future review of improvement plans, satisfaction of conditions of approval, recordation of the final map. The final map is currently being processed under development engineering. On May 17, 2023, just last week, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing to consider the time extension request. After discussion and deliberation by the Planning Commission, a motion was made to approve the project with a 6-1-0 vote to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council. The project site is located on the southeast corner of Lincoln Boulevard and Gateway Drive. The property has a general plan land use designation of community commercial and its zone commercial within the downtown Lincoln area. In October 2022, under a separate conditional use permit and design review application, the site received planning commission's approval for a Dutch Bros Coffee on parcel 1, as you see outlined in this map. Findings, the city council will review the planning commission's recommendation from May 17th, 2023, and make the final determination on the time extension request. The applicant has shown a sustained effort to meet the requirements of the tentative parcel map by anticipating the time needed to subsequently process the recording of the final map. According to the applicant, the extension of time will provide additional time for processing and to complete the conditions of approval. This is the first discretionary time extension request for the Auburn Ravine Center tentative parcel map. According to Lincoln Municipal Code, a total of 6 years are allowed for discretionary time extensions. In the event the final map is still in process by the time the 4-year time extension is set to expire, the applicant can request a second discretionary time extension of 2 years. The approved map remains consistent with the applicable standards of the general plan, zoning ordinance title 18, and subdivision ordinance title 17. So that leads us to our recommendations. Staff recommends the city council conduct a public hearing and consider the information contained in the staff report, testimony of the public, and adopt resolutions detailing the actions recommended by the Plan Commission. When determined that the project qualifies for a categorical exemption under section 15315 minor land division of the CEQA guidelines, and thereby is exempt from further environmental review, and approve a 4-year time extension of the approved Auburn Ravine Center tentative parcel map. That concludes my presentation. If the city council has any questions, I'm able to answer, or also the applicants here in the room as well.
All right, very good. Questions or comments from the council?
So does that mean my Dutch Brothers is delayed? Okay, okay. I get asked that every day, Ryan. Okay, okay. Gotcha.
If you could come up to the microphone and maybe even start over for the folks at
start
home that
over.
want to know when their Dutch Bros is coming.
Sure. Ryan Rogers, the
And
developer of
actually,
the.
this is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open
Yep.
that to the public hearing.
I'm Ryan Rogers, the developer of the project for the Dutch Brothers. We have submitted building plans, for the improvements. We're looking to move forward as quickly as possible on that. We're working with designer for the undergrounding of the power lines and building improvements and all that as quickly as possible. So part of the conditions of approval will be the completion of the construction. And so we were bumping up against the time period. And so that's why we requested the additional time. We intend to move forward as quickly as we can.
That's
Thank you.
music to my ears. Yeah,
Any
Thank
question-
you.
any
You've
questions?
made these two very happy.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well,
Well, just because,
He likes
I
that.
don't want to be made a liar.
Yeah, one-
I keep
one
telling
thing
everybody,
that-
it's coming, it's coming.
One thing that would be helpful also is just clarification is that our understanding and our original approval is that we'd be undergrounding the poles at the project location, of our development. There's a third pole that's off in the ravine that my understanding would not be removed because it flies the creek. PG&E is fine with that. I just wanted to get clarification letter from Public Works if I could that's the intent. So that would be helpful.
In,
Thank you.
question, I think, for the tentative map is on parcel 1.
Yes.
Correct? So that's what is the extension is? Or the
time
extension for
extension
all
is to
3?
complete the parcel, the map is all that piece of it is. It's not a extension of a conditional use or any of the rest of it. It's just for the time period to complete the parcel map.
The parcel map for all 3
Yes,
parcels?
yes.
That's what that meant. In 3.
Mayor, Mr. Rogers mentioned the triangular piece of essentially right of way that the city has on the corner of Gateway and Lincoln Boulevard. And Christine and I worked out an arrangement with Ryan wherein we'll receive an easement for access down to the creek in exchange for that land, which really doesn't have much value to us. so that he can complete his project. And the idea, I think, initially was to make sure that we still had the ability for our Adopt a Creek folks to get down there and do the work they need to do.
We got to close the public.
We do, as soon as we find out that nobody else wants to speak.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Anyone not online? I'll close the public hearing. And we'll bring it back up here for action.
Okay, I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. And you got the clarification you needed on that last power poll, yes? There's nodding heads around the table. All right. All right, now we move on to general business. Item 10A, adopt 2 resolutions for the lighting landscaping district number 1 annual update. Resolution 2023-095, initiating proceedings and ordering the preparation of the fiscal year 23-24 engineers report for lighting and landscaping district number 1, and subject to approval of the first resolution, staff is recommending adoption of a second resolution, Resolution 2023-096, approving the preliminary engineers report, declaring the intention to order improvements, levy and collect assessments, and setting the public hearing for June 13th, 2023. Matt?
Yeah, as an introduction to this item, I'm just going to read an excerpt from the staff report. The Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972 requires that an annual review and updated engineers report be prepared to set assessment rates each fiscal year. The assessment rates may change from fiscal year to fiscal year depending upon maintenance to be performed, but cannot exceed the maximum amount set when the district was originally formed or additional territory was annexed in, plus an annual adjustment for inflation. City Council is required to annually initiate assessment proceedings and order the preparation of an annual engineers report each year by adopting the first resolution of intention as the first step in the process. And staff has worked with Ed Espinosa with Francisco and Associates on preparation of the engineers report. And he's actually online on the meeting tonight, and he's going to give a brief presentation overview of the Landscaping and Lighting District 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Good evening, City Council and members of the public. It's great to be with you this evening. So tonight, I am going to provide an overview of the city's landscape and lighting assessment district, and also the first couple council actions in the annual approval process. And I just shared my screen. Can everybody's able to see the slides? Is that?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so first I'd like to start out with a brief background and overview of the city's landscape and lighting assessment district, otherwise known as the LAD. The city's LAD was formed back in 1982 for the purpose of funding the maintenance of the city's landscaping, parks, open space, trails, and street lighting located throughout the city. Since the district was formed back in the early 80s, from 1982 up until the early 2000s, new development was annexed into what we refer to as the district's original zone. And the original zone has developments with variable assessment rates. And also there's no CPI or consumer price index escalator authorized for all development and all property within the original zone. And we'll get into why that's important and an issue a little later in the presentation. From 2004 up until about 2015, 2016 or so, 32 additional benefit zones were annexed into the LAD. Those did have a CPI escalator authorized, and so the assessment rates for those 32 newer zones are able to be increased by the consumer price index. The consumer price index being that's published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the Bay Area, which is the most relevant index to the city of Lincoln. And so present day, we have the original zone and also 32 new benefit zones, and that comprises your landscaping lighting assessment district today. In October of 2018, the city's community facilities district number 2018-1 was formed to replace the landscaping lighting assessment district for new development, meaning all new development that comes forth through the city today is annexed into the city's CFD 18-1 versus the LAD. CFDs have benefits in terms of annual administration. Also, the annexation process is a bit more streamlined, and CFDs have more versatility in terms of funding of improvements and things of that nature. And for that reason, the shift was made over to the CFD, and that's the process today. Is new development is annexed into to that versus the LAD. So the LAD hasn't expanded since 2015, 2016. This next slide provides a breakdown of the city in terms of the maintenance districts and where what properties are within what maintenance district, and in a lot of cases in none. So the original zone is depicted in orange, and you can see that the original zone areas are scattered throughout the city, and it comprises about 14% of the city. So, you know, a pretty significant portion of the city is within that original zone. Then from there, about 26% of the city is within one of the other 32 newer zones. So in aggregate, between the original zone and the 32 zones, it's about 40% of the city that is within the city's LAD. The city's CFD 2018-1 represents about 20% of the city. And that 20% is all your new development that has come through since 2018. So all the new development within the city, regardless of location, is being annexed into this maintenance district 2018-1. And then you have parcels or properties in the city that are in neither the LAD or your CFD 2018-1. And that it represents about 40% of the city. And generally speaking, that 40% is your Del Webb community, your Sun City here, which is about 6,000 to 7,000 parcels or so. And then also your older areas of the city, your downtown areas, and things like that were grandfathered in way back when and were never annexed into a district. So that's the breakdown of the city of Lincoln in terms of maintenance districts. So today we have funding issues in the landscaping and lighting assessment district. And the first thing is the city needs to fund the portion of the LAD budget that is attributed to the benefit associated with the parcels that are not in either the LAD or a CFD, meaning the share of benefit that's attributed to those parcels, because we can't assess property within the LAD. We can't over-assess property within the LAD, let's just say, to pick up the benefit that's attributed to other parcels in the city. So the city's got to pay that portion of the LAD budget every year. And then also on top of that, the original zone and 11 other zones are projected to have an operating deficit for this upcoming fiscal year. And that's not anything new. That operating deficit has been present in recent years. And it's due to the CPI escalator. So in the case of the original zone, there is no CPI escalator. So as you can imagine, and for the assessment rates that is, and so as you can imagine, what's happened over time is maintenance costs have increased significantly. PG&E, water, landscape contracts, city staff time, all that has gone up significantly since the early 80s. And the assessment rates in the original zone have remained stagnant. So that's created this big delta in funding that's only getting larger and larger over time. Similarly, but not as drastic, these other 11 zones are experiencing an operating deficit. Some of these zones were annexed in very early in the 2000s, and the cost of maintenance has exceeded the allowable CPI increase in these zones. And over time, that's also created this delta and this deficit that now needs to be picked up by the city. So the combination of these two items is what's led to the need for significant contributions from the general fund to the city's LAD. So in terms of, sorry about that, let me back up. So for fiscal year 23-24, the proposal to fund the LAD expenditures is comprised of a handful of components. The first is the assessments that are generated through the LAD, which is estimated to be about 3.7 million for fiscal year 23-24. Then from there, certain deficit zones, those 11 zones that I mentioned earlier, a few of those have some fund balance that can cover their deficit for this upcoming fiscal year. So that is being utilized first before the city needing to contribute. And so that is what is represented here with this $165,000 figure. And then from there, we have a contribution from the city CFD, the maintenance CFD 2018-1, because there is overlap in some of the improvements that are funded between the two districts. And that overlap mainly comes down to what we refer to as the citywide improvements, those being the city's regional parks, the open space areas, landscaping and lighting associated with the city's arterials. So there's overlap in what the CFD 18-1 funds and the LAD, and for that reason, a contribution from 18-1 can be made to fund some of the items incorporated into the LAD budget. And so that contribution is estimated to be $750,000 for this upcoming fiscal year. Then from there are the amounts that need to be contributed from the general fund, from the city's general fund, to cover these two bullet points up above here. So the first being benefit attributed to the non-district parcels and benefit to the public at large. And that amount is estimated to be a little under 600,000, this 593,500. And then from there, the amount that the general fund needs to contribute to cover the remaining operating deficits for the original zone and these 11 other benefit zones. And that amount there is estimated to be about 205,000 for this upcoming fiscal year, for fiscal year 23-24. So as you can see, in aggregate between these last two bullet points here, the contribution for the non-district parcels and the benefit and the public at large, plus the amount needed to cover the operating deficits for the deficit zones, the amount that needs to be contributed from the general fund is about 800,000 in total for fiscal year 23-24. And that contribution, we're anticipating that it's going to keep increasing every year due to CPI and cost of service and all that. So we're thinking this 800,000 over time is going to keep going up. So with that being said, what is being done to alleviate these issues, these funding issues for the LAD? The implementation or the passage of Proposition 218 back in 1996 significantly changed the way assessment rates can be established or increased. So since the passage of Prop 218, the establishment of any new assessment or an increase to an existing assessment requires noticing and balloting all affected property owners and determining that there is no majority protest based on returned ballots weighted by proposed assessment. And what the weighted by proposed assessment means the higher your proposed assessment, the more your vote or your ballot counts. So as an example, if a commercial parcel, their proposed assessment is $500, a single family home is proposed to pay $100, assuming both properties returned a ballot. The commercial property, their ballot would count 5 times as much as the single family home. So that's a requirement since Prop 218. Also, there is a pretty strict benefit nexus that needs to be established anytime you implement a new assessment or increase an existing assessment, meaning the city has to quantify general benefit to the public at large, and separate that from special benefit and those costs that are conferred to property. And only the special benefit is what can be assessed and ultimately make its way into the assessment district. So back in 2018, 2019, the city took on evaluating what the strategy would be to conduct Proposition 218 proceedings to increase assessments for the city's LAD and alleviate some of these funding issues. So some council workshops were held, and because what we were looking at was essentially noticing and balloting the entire city, which is a major undertaking, very costly. City staff was directed at that time to conduct a poll and a survey to determine if property owners were amenable to approving any sort of assessment increase back in 2019. So the city hired a consultant to do the polling and surveying, and the survey results came in. And unfortunately, what it indicated was that the property owners were much more likely than not to oppose any sort of LAD increase at that time. And because the survey results were not favorable, city staff got direction to table Prop 218 proceedings, revisit them at a later date, and determine best course of action at a later time. And so that brings us to present day. And so this evening, what we're recommending is the recommendation is broken down into 2 components. The first is proceeding with the remaining council actions regarding the typical LAD annual approval process. Tonight, of which is council would take the first 2 council actions, which is approving the first resolution, initiating the proceedings, and then the second resolution, adopting the second resolution, declaring the intent to levy and collect assessments, approving the preliminary engineer's report, and also setting June 13th of 2023 as the date for the required public hearing. At the June 13th city council meeting or public hearing, at the close of the public hearing, city council would adopt a final resolution approving the final engineer's report and assessments for fiscal year 23-24. And at that point, we would have everything we need to submit the assessments to the county auditor's office by the June 30th county deadline. So that is the first recommendation that this evening is the approval of those resolutions to proceed with the levy of the assessments. And then the second item is to consider a future Prop 218 analysis and begin formulating the strategy to evaluate options as it relates to Prop 218. And the 3 components to that, or the 3 initial components to that, would be to determine what the benefit zones would look like, and that requires performing a benefit analysis and assigning assessments based on that benefit analysis. Then we would present the Proposition 218 recommendations, the proposed assessments to City Council at council workshops. And from there, based on the feedback and direction we would get from city council, we would begin formulating a strategy for public engagement, outreach, community meetings, polling, and surveying. And it's my understanding that that this is something that could potentially happen later on this year, but just wanted to present that as what is being intended at this time. That concludes my presentation this evening. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions City Council or the public may have.
All right, Ed,
Thank you.
thank you. Have anything else, Matt?
I would like to add, staff is looking at inefficiencies to save money. We are looking at streetlight conversion opportunities to reduce those costs, as well as looking at opportunities to reduce irrigation costs and water use efficiency. So there are other opportunities other than just raising rates and finding efficiencies. So we are pursuing those opportunities.
And one other thing, Mayor, Ed wasn't privy to it, but during your strategic planning session, I think it's important to note that this was on the list of super important items to get to, and the council decided that at least during the first year to year and a half of the cycle that we were going to focus on other key priorities and rejoin that towards the end. And during my comments at the end of the agenda, I'll go through some of those other things.
All right, thank you, Sean. Any questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I totally remember that. Getting that survey, I was driving to work and I don't usually do surveys, but I just happened to ask a few additional questions. And I think maybe the survey didn't come across so well to some people, because after a few questions that I asked, I was totally in favor of even $5 a month to make sure there was money to upkeep the lighting and the landscaping and whatnot. So kind of sad that it came back that way.
If we could assess Ben an additional $5.
Yeah, there you go. There we
Please,
go.
which I'll pay 10.
Yeah. Well, now, right.
We're now at the point where we're at 800,000. We're at the point next year, it's going to be over $1 million out of the general fund. And that's a significant amount. But it's a really heavy lift. Whatever the strategy to make it passable is going to be a very heavy lift in designing the districts or whatever. So, I think we made the right decision and not trying to attempt it this year, but we going to have to attack it as soon as possible, as soon as we have the time.
We are.
It frustrates the hell out of me.
I've got a curiosity, and either you or Sean can take this. New development is annexed into the newer districts. What about infill in the original district? Is that considered new development, and can we pull the smaller infill projects?
I guess I hate to give this answer, but it depends. But I'll give you an example.
You had a law degree.
I don't. I just play one on TV. I'll give you an example. There's an infill project in the downtown area, kitty corner to where we're sitting today. That project will go into CFD 1801 and 2. So provided that there's not some component of the original entitlement that precludes us from doing that, then it's just sort of standard practice for development engineering to get them into the process. We do the one of the things I didn't mention earlier is we're trying to make sure that in the CFDs, we don't end up inadvertently with a similar problem of having too many zones, because every project's a little bit different and their cost or impact is a little different. Their original tax share agreement is a little different. So most of those projects require an analysis. But what we've been doing more recently is we've been working with developers on, and that costs money for them to do the analysis, the developer pays. we were working with developers to make reasonable comparative assumptions to other projects that are very, very similar in density and maybe even location. And provided that the developer is okay with it, incorporating them into a previously existing zone within that CFD so that we're not, in 30 more years, some new city council is looking back on this and saying, boy, there's an awful lot of zones for us to manage on an ongoing basis. But the answer to your question is the vast majority of the time, yes, they're going into one of the two districts.
And to drill down even deeper, let's assume somebody tosses, as they are now allowed by law, a couple of ADUs behind their existing residence. Does that trigger the ability?
No, and in fact, I think it's effective this year, or maybe it's 24. I can't remember which one. Ed would know, but there's language in a new law signed into law by the governor that will preclude us from even assessing CFDs whatsoever to affordable housing projects. So that's a separate policy discussion that we just so happen to be having on another project right now. And it'll be an interesting puzzle for the city council to try to figure out about how you encourage that kind of development without being able to collect what it costs to provide the service to them.
Councilmember Andreotta almost tore apart the dais on that answer.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was thinking, can we assess the governor for the
Right.
difference, the impacts of these projects that he's brought to our community?
It's you could draw a very direct line, even a little bit squiggly, of an unfunded mandate.
Right.
Is really what it is.
It's exactly what it is.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
No, just thank you, Ed, for that, that good presentation. I really appreciate it. And I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, something that has to be taken care of, but as we talked about at our strategic retreat, we have to do the other
Higher
one for,
priorities,
yeah,
yes.
and then we can come back to this, so.
In that case, I'll go to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to speak on this item?
Mayor, we do have somebody on Zoom.
All right.
Lena, please go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just for those of you that don't know, you're new to the council, the resistance on the survey that happened in 2018-19 from Dale Webb, Sun City portion of the city is because we take care of our own landscaping, our own lighting, our own water, our own parks, our own sidewalks. We pay millions of dollars to take care of all that. So I just want to point that out to the new council members. That's why the resistance. And so I know it's been said, well, we don't help pay for the other parks in the city, but we do pay for, I think, 5 or 6 parks in our own community. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Thank you.
So on the survey, did they include Sun City? Like, why would they? Do you
Well, I
remember?
think so here's Travis is going to correct me because he understands this in a way that I don't, but generally what we're discussing here is citywide needs. So for example, the classic example I like to use is McBean. McBean is a citywide park, and the inequity that Ed mentioned is really related to that you have a large percentage of the community that's not paying anything towards the maintenance and upkeep of that. And then you have other portions of the community that are paying that. And so in public finance, it's called a free rider syndrome. And I'm not using that as a pejorative term. It's an economics term where some group of people is paying for a community benefit that everybody gets to use and others aren't. The example of it in economics is a fireworks show. Some people pay for it, others don't. Everybody gets to enjoy it the exact same way. And so in this particular instance, the problem is that you have a smaller portion of the community funding the full upkeep and maintenance and upgrade of those regional facilities. and some that aren't. And were we to go back and start all over again, we would have fixed that for sure. But it's also understandable that when the polling goes out, there needs to be a nuance to the explanation about what exactly we're asking. Because I think to Lena's comment, if it's a bland question, I could easily see a Sun City resident saying, well, wait a second, I already have facilities here that I pay for. So why am I paying for others outside of my area? It's reasonable.
It is, and one of the answers to that is we are increasingly paying from the general fund to cover the difference. And that's the fund we use for public safety. And so we're impacting our ability to deliver the level of public safety we all wish and desire.
Yep.
Mr. Chapman, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. I too realize that the city's been grappling with this for quite some time. What I'm about to suggest, or at least bring to the public's knowledge, may not be a popular one. When I moved into town over a decade ago, I was at awe getting used to where everything was in town. And one of the things that I noticed more so than any other places that I ever lived, my question was, I've never lived in a town that has so many parks. I mean, not just a few, a lot of parks. And when development comes in, it's like that cute little puppy that you get, faded a lot. It doesn't take a lot of maintenance. And then over time, what happens is it gets bigger. You got to feed it more. You got to maintain it more. And you're getting back admiration, love, and hair all over the rug. But outside of that, it's costing you. And at some point, again, I don't know how you undo a park, but the problem remains is that all of us, at some point, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, in dealing with safety issues, the general fund, we can quibble all day long about where money goes from the general fund, but this is one of those bullet points that point out that how many parks can the city afford to own and operate and maintain? And I think that really is the bottom line on a whole lot of this, is that there are people that, if you've got young kids and you've got them in various programs, and the city does a terrific job with that, from Joyner Park to McBean and all the parks that are in the neighborhoods. But at some point, I think we need to ask ourselves, how much of this can we continue to afford? Every time a new development comes in, I do. I'll look over the information, and the developer's putting over a percentage of whatever, and they're going to pay to put the park in. And, oh, wow, man, this is terrific. Well, if they stayed around to take care of it and maintain it, it wouldn't be a big deal. It's a free gift. In this here, it's a free burden. And that's exactly what we're getting. So it doesn't answer the question as to how to deal with it. But at least in the future, I would hope that we would look at, I don't know too many people. I'm over by Coyote Pond, and we don't have a deluge. Summertime, nice weather, that sort of stuff. We're not packed up. People aren't coming over to look at the pond. I'm just saying that does happen with McBean, but all the other parks that we have, I'm just not so sure with the many automobiles that we have that is an issue of getting to McBean or some other park. So thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back up here. Looks like we'll handle these both separately. Looking for a motion on resolution 2023-095. Do I have a motion? Anyone?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skimp. And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Looking for a motion on resolution 2023-096.
I move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, Gwen.
Yes. Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint. And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. All right, we move on to item 10B. 2022 through 2025 budget overview. Nita.
Mayor, while she gets set up for her presentation, I'm going to steal her thunder. I just really want to spend a quick moment. We're going to have at least one more meeting where we bring you the full budget after this sort of additional kind of preparatory presentation. The 2-year cycle has been pretty refreshing, at least from my perspective. And Nita and her team have put in an immense amount of work to create something that I think is actually more professional than we've had in previous years. And I just think that, you know, finance is one of those functions that just sort of operates and you don't really think about it too much. And this amount of work, in addition to everything that they do, is just to be acknowledged. And so I wanted to make sure I did it before she gives you some of the more concerning news that she's likely to share here in a moment.
I'm not sure he actually stole your thunder.
I know, he usually does a better job of it.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I just wanted to begin by apologizing for the typo on the agenda. It says the 2022 to 2025 budget. but
does.
We
I was
are in
curious.
fact discussing the 2023 to 2025 budget. So a 2-year budget cycle, not a 4-year budget.
I didn't know if you're going retroactive, what you were doing.
Okay, so this is our second budget presentation and our final budget presentation before we bring forward to you the full budget to adopt at the end of June. We'll start out with the general fund revenues, and I think that's a good segue in, since Ed was just talking about the burden on the general fund by the LADs. You know, that is one of the items that draws on the general fund that's not necessarily equitably distributed amongst all of the funds. Some other things to note just about the economy in general. We're still looking at, we still kind of have mixed conclusions regarding the economic outlook. There are still some people saying that a downturn is inevitable, but there are as many people saying that is not the case, that we're in a mere correction, that we could be pulling out of it in the next 12 to 18 months. Time will tell who's right. We are still estimating a growth in our property taxes and in our sales tax revenue, just as a result of especially the timing issue with property taxes. Any significant decrease in property home values, we typically don't see that for 2 years after the fact. As you know, some of the factors regarding the changes or the effect on the economy is that unemployment remains low, and it has remained low for the past few years now. But we have had some concerning incidences with a couple of recent bank closures, testing the market. But even with that, you know, again, it's not certain where we're going to be 12 to 18 months from now. So we're taking a conservative but optimistic view of our revenues. And then regarding the general fund use by department, as you can see, public safety, which is one of the most important items that Jen noticed on the flash vote results, is also the largest use of general fund dollars. So that's an appropriate way to spend those funds. We do include in this budget any changes for any MOUs that have been approved and that we are certain that are upcoming. In addition, I wanted to make note or remind this council that the 9 firefighters that we hired this fiscal year are currently not funded through the general fund. They are funded through standard allowance dollars and through the property tax share. Standard allowance is currently bearing 90% of that cost, while the property tax share is bearing 10% of the cost. Just as an FYI, those personnel, the cost for them over this 2-year budget cycle is about $4.2 million. Here's a quick summary of the general fund. As you can see, we are in a bit of a structural deficit again this year. That's due primarily to one-time or CIP expenditures. We reviewed the CIP expenditures at our last budget meeting. There's about $2 million in CIP costs in the general fund this year. We are meeting our reserve target that was reviewed and updated this year at 25% of the general fund balance. One thing to note during our CIP review, we did reduce the City Hall reorganization project down to a cost for design only. So we'll be pending what that design review folds out and what the council selects as their options for how they want to move forward with that project. And after that occurs, we can amend the budget and include additional costs for that construction project. Did I mention this was going to be the fastest budget presentation ever and that there are only 9 slides?
You did not.
So moving on to PFE funds, just quickly wanted to give you highlight a couple of different things. You'll notice that the Parks PFE, Fire PFE does have a negative balance. However, it paid down a significant amount of the interfund loans that exist within that fund balance. So, and as you can see that it is paying those loans off through this coming budget cycle, going down from a negative balance of 1.9 million to 1.6 million, with a payoff to occur approximately 13 years after the end of this budget cycle. Other things to note is the administrative, PFE administrative has 2.9 million. We're anticipating that at least some of those funds will be used for the City Hall reorganization. One of the larger fund balances is through in the PFE parks, and we have included in the budget 5 parks totaling about $6 million. And in addition, there are a lot of future park costs that aren't included in this budget, some of which could be funded through PFEs, some of which could be funded through other areas, and some of which we don't have funding for at all, to Mr. Chapman's point, that the city staff will be looking for funding as we move forward with those projects. But we'll utilize that 6.5 million as we are able and as it's permissible for those PFE funds. And then transportation, we are working towards a project of the Ferrari Ranch Road widening. That is a $10 million project with only $1.7 million in the transportation fund. We've talked a bit about, more than a bit, about the enterprise funds. So I won't belabor them too much, but did want to point out to you that the water fund is now, or will be by the end of this budget cycle, about $4.8 million in the red, or bankrupt, in other words, with the city unable to pay the cost of service in order to continue to provide the level of service that the city is currently providing to its communities. As a result of this dire need of this enterprise fund, the city is moving forward with a rate study that will bring back to this council at the first meeting in June. And then hopefully proceed with the Prop 218 process in order to cure this deficit. But without an increase in rates, there's not a path forward for this fund and for the wastewater fund, which we'll talk about in just a minute. We do have included in this anticipated rate increases from PCWA, our water provider. I think that's all I wanted to say there, unless you want me to talk more doom and gloom. about
That
water.
was enough doom and gloom for the moment. You'll have some more here.
Similar picture for wastewater. Again, we're looking at an over $4 million deficit at the end of this budget cycle without any changes in rates. One of the reasons the decrease in revenues is as a result of forming the LISWA JPA. The county no longer pays the city for its treatment. The county and the city will both pay LISWA for our wastewater treatment. LISWA will bill its two customers, the county and the city, for actual cost of services. And with those costs of services, it is fairly close to what the city was paying internally. So there's not a significant increase in forming that additional government agency. But without an increase in rates, there's not much of a path forward for the wastewater fund. It's also the saddest budget report I've ever had to get. Solid waste. While solid waste will have approximately, it'll still be a almost viable fund at the end of this budget cycle with about $1 million left in the fund balance. It won't last much longer after the end of this budget cycle without a rate increase. We're including in this various capital expenditures. We do have anticipated rate increases and additional costs for disposal. We also have increased costs for services and supplies, higher fewer costs, and we are looking down the barrel of legislation for recycling, for green waste, for possible electrification of vehicles, et cetera, that we just don't have the funds to cover those additional needs.
More unfunded mandates.
More unfunded mandates, correct. So the airport, which we've talked about in years past of having a large negative fund balance due to its interfund loan, is currently the golden child of the enterprise districts.
Which is so ironic.
It does currently generate just enough revenues to cover its expenses, but with the low amount of revenues generated by the airport district, it is still just limping along. You know, there aren't enough sufficient funds to complete any of the needed capital projects or any of the needed upkeep or maintenance required out at the airport. And so without, the airport committee is aware and they are meeting monthly. They have been revived by this council and they are talking about this at every single meeting, the ways to generate revenues and the ways to move this municipality forward. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the council?
Thank you, Nita.
Go ahead and open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? We've had lengthy conversations on all of these, and while it is a bit doom and gloom on those funds, I think it's important to note that those funds have not had increases for the last 10 years.
That's correct.
And so there has been great benefit to the ratepayers for those 10 years, but now it is absolutely essential that we correct that moving forward and stabilize all of those accounts. Don, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, it's kind of interesting because in my experience, I spend much more time in the budget process over the course of my career worrying about the general fund. In fact, 99% of the time. So this is a little bit unique that our position is much, much worse in the enterprise funds, which is counterintuitive because an enterprise fund is something that the council has much more control over than revenues in your general fund. But what I would say is that if you're talking about it from, we know what we need to do or what the community at least needs to consider in terms of curing the problem in your enterprise funds. It is what it is. As far as the general fund goes, I would say that we're not in a great position long-term, but for this 2-year cycle, we are going to be able to meet the expectations of the council and community in terms of project delivery and generally, albeit low, staffing levels for service. And I think that it would have been much more complex and difficult to do in a one-year cycle. It doesn't show a total picture, in my opinion. So what you'll see when NETA brings the final budget to you is a much more holistic view in terms of the general fund of what we're funding. And then just a realistic conversation about we're going to be able to make it and provide really great service over the next 2 years. Thereafter, and during that period, we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions about how we bolster the general fund to be able to move forward and, increase, our services, into the 25 through 27 years and on. So, and then when we get to my comments at the very end of the agenda, I'll go through a few of things that were brought up during strategic retreat.
And the only other thing I would add is that the funding for the recently hired 9 firefighters will be extinguished by the end of 2026. And so that moves that burden if the council would like to keep those firefighters to the general fund. And at $4 million a year, that won't last long in the general fund. And I think it's also important to note that while you will see additional position requests when we bring forward the budget for adoption at the end of June, there are more positions that we're currently not able to fund with the general fund dollars. That we are still understaffed in areas that are of importance to the community, such as in our public works, such as in our library and in our police, that we don't have the dollars to fund those. So if we were to program in all of the positions that we need to provide the optimal service to this community, that the budget would look very dire across multiple funds.
We probably cut roughly, I'd have to go back and look, but in terms of personnel requests, we probably cut more than 75% of the requests. And we didn't have requests generally that I thought were unreasonable. They're all things that are generally needed. But what we tried to do with this budget was to sprinkle assistance in areas where we thought that we could afford it for now and push off those other requests until maybe we're in a different position.
All right. Thank you, Nita. Appreciate it. This is an information item only. There's no action to be taken on it tonight. With that, we move on to item 10C, adopt resolution 2023-097, consideration of a fencing project adjacent to the Auburn Ravine and Gateway Drive. Mr. Scully.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I'm really excited. This is my first staff report after doing thousands of them in front of city councils. That's on a fence. So, but actually, it's a pretty neat opportunity to address a chronic kind of nuisance issue that a segment of our community has dealt with along the ravine. As council is well aware, we have a homeless population that lives along the ravine. And one of the things we've heard from the Gateway Commons folks is they have experienced essentially a thoroughfare through their subdivision that has caused a lot of consternation and has also the facts are that sometimes some of those folks in that population maybe don't treat their neighbors' property with all the respect that it deserves. And so Christina and I have, as we've been talking about, been working on sort of more global pilot program. But in the meantime, we started to think about what could we do as a short-term sort of triage to provide some relief to that community in that area. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Scott Boynton came up with a really neat idea. He sent me a message one day and said, I don't know why I haven't thought about this a long time ago, but what if we gated or created a fence essentially along the area where the split rail fence currently exists that is something that's nice and ornamental or sturdy and really provides separation from the ravine area into the residential area to the north. And so he went out and quoted it. And I'm going to show you on a map here in just a moment exactly where we are proposing the fence. Thank you. The area is along the southern side of Gateway. Oh, here we go. And that red line is not definitive, but generally it will start right around the termination of the property line where Ryan Rogers Dutch Bros project is planned to be. And it will run along the fence line that currently exists all the way to essentially the furthest most eastern side is a city facility that has a masonry wall there where it will be anchored into. This is a heavy duty wrought iron black fence, 5 feet tall with about a foot of ornamental spike on the top. There will be 2 16-foot gates that are proposed, which will provide emergency vehicle access and to PD and fire, as well as for public works for when they need to get down there and work on things. And so there will be no access point for the general public to the east. There will still be access to the west because it will be open over there. And we had toyed around with the idea of including a pedestrian gate that would be lockable. And we may come back for authority at some point in the future, but our recommendation for now is to not include that because for at least the foreseeable future, we want to see if we can change the behavior of the residents who live down in the creek. Not using that area as a thoroughfare up to the services they provide in more central downtown Lincoln. So we think what's going to happen is that the folks that are in the creek will when they need to go northbound, they will come out to almost Lincoln Boulevard. And we're sort of betting on the fact that most folks aren't going to want to turn around and walk all the way back to the Gateway Commons area and then up northbound. Which, effectively may cure a lot of the nuisance issues. The other problem that we have that the HOA president has shared with me is that a lot of folks that go to visit the homeless park in the Gateway parking lot, which is a separate and other kind of nuisance issue. Additionally, there's some security that's provided here. And one of the things Christine and I talked about a lot as we were thinking this through is you make a physical change to the space. What are the unintended consequences as a result of this? I can't definitively answer that, obviously, but I think that essentially what happens is most folks will use Lincoln Boulevard because that's the most convenient path now. Alternatively, I suppose there's a possibility that they go eastbound up and around the back end of the subdivision and then pop up at McBean Park, kind of by where the ballpark is there. I went and looked at it myself today. It's a pretty long trek to make all the way around just because of the geography. So it seems more unlikely, but I think it solves the problem either way because then they'll be on, 2nd Street and we'll have a direct line to most of the services they head for that way, which is fine as well. But really what this project was about was trying to provide a relief to a community that's really struggled. And I would say this, I've spoken with Dawn a number of times from Gateway. She's been nothing but gracious and understanding. And so we feel like it's a worthwhile investment. In addition to the fact that the split rail fence gets broken all the time. People drive through it, they knock it down, they vandalize it. This will be a much more sturdy option. And I won't say that there won't be vandalism, there will, but it'll provide real separation. And I think it'll look pretty nice too. So our recommendation is you approve the budgetary authority. I believe the amount is about $84,000 for the fence. And we will try it out and see how it works. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Comments?
Yeah, I was going to say that I really appreciate the hard work you guys put into this, especially because it is an area of town that they have really endured a lot and have been asked to endure a lot out of the kindness of their hearts for the people that are struggling down there. So thank you to that community and really thank you for your guys' efforts. You really do so much behind the scenes that so many people don't know.
True. Anyone else?
Well, I love simple solutions to irritating problems. And you've accomplished that. You know, a very simple solution that should work.
Well, and I appreciate the momentum, right? Like we've been talking about this problem and dealing with this problem and the volunteers and Lana's team and all that. But now we have to actually like do some concrete things and knowing that, okay, we're going to try this. It may work, it may not, but at least we're going to do something. And then if it works, then we keep going. If it doesn't, then we adjust. But I'm very pleased and excited that we're moving out and actually, you know, doing something that people can see, right? That we're taking steps. And so I think, as Ben said, you guys have done a lot of work. You know, we've done a lot of work on our task force meetings. And I'm really excited to see when you guys do bring your plans forward and whatever, the progress that we can make. So appreciate it.
Well, there are two separate elements of addressing the homeless issue, aren't there? There is actually trying to reduce the homeless population. And then there is this, which is trying to mitigate the negative impacts of the homeless population on the rest of the community. And I think this is the first substantial action that we've been able to take. Obviously, Mana and her crew are doing Herculean efforts down there to reduce some of those impacts, but this is the city directly taking an action and making an investment to try to address some of those challenges. All right, if there's nothing from the council, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. I do have a card on this one. Don Beltry. Don, you still with us?
Yay!
Yes, you are.
And Don, I did not intentionally put this at the very end of the meeting, so you had to wait, but just worked out that
Stay
way.
As long as it takes, that's all good. So first, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is ecstatic news for us, and we're so grateful. I'm so grateful as the representative of the Gateway Lincoln Community HOA that this has been a step forward in being positive and helping us with a solution. I don't know if it resolves everything, but it's a solution to help. And I really, really do honestly feel that it will really help the behaviors and the activities there and the frustrations from the residents there and even from people that visit. So many people, they won't be able to, but so many people have seen that beautiful area and seen the paths that you're supposed to be able to walk, and people wanted to go down and walk. And when they walked down, they went, oh, and they all turned around and went back. So it hasn't been the opportunity that we thought it was going to be, but this fence will help, I think, with the imminent problem now of those residents that are there. And I think it will really help to decrease the suspicious activity that we're constantly calling the LPD on all the time. And I do think it'll bring a stronger calm to the area. And I just can't thank you enough, truly, truly. Mr. Sean and Miss Christine have been above and beyond listening and helping and coming up with solutions and resolutions. So once again, I will say thank you, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak and tell the city council, thank you for listening. And also the residents of our community are so grateful to you. So I praise the ground you walk on for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Mayor, we do have somebody on Zoom. Natalie, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone about this fence issue that's been working hard. I have been a resident and homeowner here since 2019, and I've encountered a lot of issues with that particular homelessness issue. And I'm just really excited about the fence. And I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm sure staff very much appreciates that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll bring it back up here for a motion. Oh, come
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
Is it an information item?
no, we're yeah.
Resolution. Heck,
No,
yeah. I don't,
Go ahead.
please, yes. Let's do it.
Second.
I motion.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second.
Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. And I understand that confusion. We stuck an information item above another action item. Maybe in the future, we could either delineate very clearly that something is an action item and then something is an information item, or separate them out somehow differently. All right, with that, we've largely completed our agenda. We move on to city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, a handful of very quick things. One thing Travis and I didn't get to mention during his report. First of all, Travis in the BIA and PFE item really deserves a lot of thank yous because he, along with a couple other staff people and Ed actually worked for I don't know, 6 months, 5 months, hand in hand with a select group of folks from the BIA to figure this out and identify areas where we can reasonably make adjustments to our program. And it's difficult because I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of disagreement over certain things that were proposed and not. And Travis has mentioned to me a number of times that we have generally viewed the PFE program as conceptual. And it's a $2 billion or something like that program. And so sometimes when we get requests to identify things that are smaller components of it that don't really move the needle very much, it can kind of get a little bit frustrating. That said, looks like through the process there was the identification of some things that just didn't really make sense for us any longer. And so that's sort of the point of the process. And we're going to continue to have discussions with them even over the next cycle, specifically related to some components of SUD-C and the Sunset Specific Plan that we want to make sure do not overlap with other improvements that are already planned. So we don't want to be collecting dollars for things that they're also, I keep doing that today, that they're also collecting dollars for, right? Just a couple of quick announcements. There's a homelessness panel that Christine and I and the chief will be participating on tomorrow with hosted by Placer County up at Sun City. It's at 9 a.m.
Councilman Carlson will be joining you as well.
Councilman Carlson will be there. I encourage anybody that would like to attend to please attend. I'm sure Councilmember Lauritsen will remind everyone of this, but just so it's continuing to be hammered into everybody's brain, on the 31st at 4 o'clock at Sun City, there will be a workshop on the Titan missile site contamination with attendees from United USAC is what I call them, but Army Corps of Engineers and the Water Board. This morning, the mayor and vice mayor, myself, Christine, Travis, and our public works director, Matt, all attended a meeting with PCWA on a really, really important agreement that will be coming to council in June, probably your next meeting in June, that will kickstart the Ophir Water Treatment Plant, which is really probably the most important public infrastructure project to guarantee our ability to provide safe, reliable, and expanding water services. I won't go into all the detail now about it, but it's one of the most important agreements I think that this council will consider if you think about it in the long term. And then finally, huge thank you to the council and staff for participating in our strategic retreat. All 5 council members participated in a lot of pre-prep work on that. They were interviewed by the consultant. They talked about their priorities. There was then a larger discussion thereafter. And I just got the draft yesterday, and I believe I'll have it ready for your next meeting for formal adoption, but just as a sneak peek to those who weren't able to attend, there's many, many, many priorities. The ones that were grouped together as highest priorities are as follows: A, revenue sales tax measure, B, water, sewer, and garbage rates, C, an economic development plan. Each one of these has a lot of subcomponents to it that I won't go into right now. D, the downtown plan that is funded by the grant we received through SACOG, which the working title that we've been talking about internally is Project Downtown Lincoln, which, would open to comments if you have something more snappy. E is our homeless pilot program and services. D is our airport action plan and associated goals related to the airport, many of which we kind of already have a jump start on with our airport committee. So thank you very much for participating in the process. It's tremendously helpful to me, and a huge thank you to the staff team that were there. Really a very proud moment to get to work with so many people that are willing to take a couple days of their, already overloaded schedules and provide some really great feedback and brainstorm with the electeds on what's important. So thank you very much.
You bet. And you would thank Greg for us as well. He was a big part of that conversation. All right. Council initiated business. I'm going to separate these two out. Council initiated business first. Anyone have one? Seeing none. Any committee reports?
I have one. The airport committee, we met and we have a subcommittee, leasing, what we call the leasing subcommittee, and they did a report. Our intention is to develop land leases at the airport so people can build things and generate revenue for the airport, make the airport successful. And they've done a really good job of looking at all of the business types, all of the variability of things. And the upshot was they were given direction to develop prototype RFPs for the different business types to go out to ask for proposals on putting in facilities at the airport. We also discussed the lack of, if you will, lighting and landscaping district on the airport. It's called a common area management plan. And the committee as a whole will continue to work on that to be able to generate a revenue source for maintaining the common area, common parts of the airport that currently aren't being maintained to good standards for all, and put that back on the, just like lighting and landscape, put it back on the people that use it.
It's been like an HOA, actually.
Like an HOA. And those are the significant things.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, for LISWA, they're just about done transferring all of the assets, correct? Right? They were under a timeline. It was supposed to be done by the end of May. Is that correct? Yeah. And so did George finish it all?
We're close. We have an appointment tomorrow to
Okay.
notarize some final
Okay,
documents.
good. Because at our last meeting earlier this month, he said they were just about finished. So things are moving along well with that. And then also for Pioneer, just wanted to report out that there was a slight pause in the contract negotiations with Greenleaf for the SB 1383 alternative solution for biomass. But they've handled whatever the issue was, and they are continuing with their negotiations, amending the contract to extend the original June 30th deadline until July 31st. And there are several, I want to say 11, but I don't know if I read that right, several jurisdictions, including us, that have said we're interested. And so doesn't mean that we've officially agreed or signed anything yet, but they are working on behalf of several jurisdictions. And so that's moving forward. Yep.
Very good. Ben, you have anything? You don't have to.
No.
Okay. Bill?
No.
All right. So as you can see, we brought back council committee reports. I think this is exactly the way we want to handle those, brief and informative to the rest of us, really useful for those of us up here who are not allowed because of the Brown Act to sit down and have a conversation about what's going on in each of the individual committees. So I think we're going to keep it. I think we're going to keep it moving forward. And I think it'll be very useful to us and very transparent.
As long as they're kept short.
As long as they're kept short and no show and tell. which has unfortunately happened in the past. All right, with that, we move on to information items. Bill, you got your thunder stolen a little bit on the
Yeah, I know,
business
it's,
side, but
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers is coming back on next Wednesday at 4 o'clock at the Orchard Creek. Hopefully they'll answer some more questions.
And Councilmember Lawson, the water board too, right?
The water board too, yeah.
all right, any other pieces of information?
I have one. I was asked to share this because it's just another example of how this community comes together for, you know, fun things, important things. And so Phoenix High School, which if you know anything about our school district, Phoenix High School is the continuation school. And they don't always have the same resources that the other two high schools do. And on April 21st, they had a prom. And yeah, and so they needed some help. And Chris Knutson approached the women's club and asked them if they would be willing to donate the venue. And so the women's club did donate the venue and some decorations. It was, from what I understand, it was really beautiful. So the kids were able to use the women's club for their prom. There were many community members who donated things. Steve Pagano from Rockstar Music did the DJ music for them. Downtown Lincoln Association gave them some commemorative picture frames. Josh Armstrong and the Chamber did some lighting for them. The Rotary Club purchased pizza and drinks for them. Several women's club members provided desserts, souvenirs with their prom theme and all of that. Corsages and boutonnieres, and Jen Farrell did the photography. And so I just wanted to mention that it was just a really special time for the students at Phoenix, and the community came together to make it happen for them. So,
It's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
yep.
If there are no additional information items, we stand adjourned.